And that's where it needs to start. You need to have, I believe, openness, as in what the program of government is, and basically deliver. Show that to deliver. And if they don't deliver, the civil servants should be able to be managed and, how would you say,
accountable.
Accountable, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so on that basis, then, and that it's a really interesting point and theme for discussion, because on the one hand, we saw, didn't we, what could be called as Portugal's deep state responding to corruption allegations, and who were these people who'd been investigating and suddenly causing the government to be overturned? That's an interesting proposition.
Well,
and also, but hold on a minute, Alan, just 1 minute. And then which would be the best party? So two things. It's like what's going on behind the system we're seeing and what we're talking about here. On the one hand, who is the deep state in Portugal? It's quite an interesting conversation for us foreigners learning about the system. And then which party would be most able to make the civil service, which, as Bobby rightly says, I think is huge and so influential and such a either freeing or blocking part of everyone's lives, which political party can make those people accountable, which is the best party to do that? So maybe you want to go first, Doc, Andy. What the Portuguese deep state, what did you make of that, and which party would make civil servants most accountable?
Right, okay. When you were talking just now, both of you, I was thinking back to a sitcom that we used to have in the UK called Yes Minister.
Yeah.
Where, and you probably both remember it. And of course, the government, the minister would have all these great ideas, and the civil servant would be able to stop them all virtually, because that was the power they had, because they knew how government worked better than their political masters. And that's been true for a very long time, and is true certainly in the UK and in Portugal and probably in Ireland and probably every Western so-called democracy that we have.
Yeah.
In terms of deep state, so okay, the police and various other investigators are part of the state. They have a state function, and look, clearly they carried out that function well in this regard. People will criticize them for taking a long time, but then before they came out openly and said people are under investigation, but you have to wait until you've got enough ammunition that the political masters can't just close down an investigation if it's declared at too early a stage. So I think they did a good job. In terms of which party would I trust to bring more openness and more the other before that, managerial revolution. Bobby, the managerial revolution has been the worst thing that's happened, certainly to public service and possibly to industry, I don't know, but certainly to public service. It meant that hospitals, instead of being run by doctors and nurses who knew the job and been there for a long time, were run by supermarket managers who knew absolutely bugger all about running a health service. And it's probably the same everywhere else. And we ended up with massive amounts of middle managers whose sole job was to push paper around and make good, hard-working professionals work harder and feel worse. And that decreased productivity massively. So we have to find a way to reverse that. And I think reducing the working week and making the managers actually do something productive would be a better idea. In terms of which political party do I think would do that? I would say those on the left, the left wing of the Socialist Party and others, for two reasons. First of all, they would tend to be the ones supporting a reduction in the working week, which would mean that those doing unproductive jobs like TikToking and other marketing jobs and middle management would have to actually bloody do some proper work, like architecture or building or making people better. And that agreement that people can still earn a living wage for reduced working hours is something you're much more likely to get under a left-leaning government than you're under a right-leaning government.
Now, arguably, there is a sort of conspiracy of the civil service voting for the party that makes sure their jobs are safe. Is that possibly what's happening, Bobby? If the left left-leaning parties are voted for or are in power?
It's how it's been explained to me, to be honest with you. And I wouldn't say that the person who explained to me was an expert by all, but it just seems to be the common sort of accepted that there's about 3 million that actually vote, 1 million of them which are civil servants, 1 million of them which need the social services that the socialist governments are providing and want to make sure that they're secured, and the other 1 million are related to them. So, and that was how it was put to be in a box. So, and this was after the fall of the last, well, let's say the resignation of the Prime Minister, that it'll make very little difference because the same party will get re-voted back in because of this situation. Now, I don't know is the answer, is my answer. I really don't know, but I think people, I don't see, when you ask which party out there, I don't see anyone that is capable of the kind of change that's required at the moment, and if ever, because it is a big change. It's a big change, and I think it nearly takes a revolution and another one.
To
bring about. Now you're both agreeing again.
to bring about change. But for me, it is the inner circle of what's run Portugal since the 70s, which is just more of the same. Yeah. And you're going to keep getting more of the same until someone actually does something about it. And that's not going to happen with the political structures that you have at the minute. Because as I said to you before, and I said it again, the first job of a politician is to get elected. The second job is to stay there. And that's it, by any means. And as I said, they can turn around and tell the civil servants they might even have some great ideas. And lots of people can have great ideas. And I've said, I've come up with lots of great ideas myself because I'm full of them. But the thing is that it doesn't matter, because unless you can push through the wall of the civil service that basically just doesn't want or bothered or care to listen, first of all, or have the desire to actually implement something that's outside of their job description. It's a bit like the guy who got a job in the electrical company, and his job was to dig holes to put poles in. And then one day he's told to take something out of the back of a van. Well, no, that's not in my job description. I'm only here to dig holes. And it's a bit like that. And as I said to you, I've been in a few council offices, and a lot of them are very, very empty. And when you ask them, where is everybody? They said they're all working from home. So that for me, and it's accepted. It's just accepted, and it's, well, that's the way things are here. And that if you don't like it, go home. You know what I mean? So I don't have any confidence that it's going to change, to be honest. I think we're just going to get more of the same, until sometimes that you get the crash. And when you have a similar 2008 crash and everyone points their fingers at the politicians and the politicians start pointing their fingers at everybody else, we're all on a downward spiral, I think, from a political point of view, because of what's inherent and what's, if you like to call it, the deep state here, which is the civil service. And for me, that's
very interesting.
That's where it lies the problems.
Yep, and you could argue. I mean, I talked about the Pareto principle earlier on, and that's going to be in my article this week for the Portugal Resident. But it's as though 20% of the people are affecting life for the other 80%. You know, they have 80% of the power, and they affect the majority's lives in a minority position. And it's not the minority we think it is. It's the it's a de facto ruling class behind the scenes, isn't it? Of the institution, the state institutions, and the elections change the icing on that cake, but the cake stays very similar, it would appear.
I just don't make up, but you asked me earlier on what about how the investors looking at it and so on.
Yeah.
right now, the types of investors, it's actually changed the type of investors. So there's different investors that are looking at Portugal for different reasons. And the main thing being opportunity, because they actually see the opportunity that this country is leaving itself in for the position of a foreign investor to buy property here, because they know of the situation to come and where it's going. So there's investors now looking at Portugal from a reason of opportunity, from a land grab opportunity. And I said this to you before, it was going to happen. It was going to happen. When you drove it down so far, the people who have money will come in and buy. And those who don't have money need to sell. And they need to sell to the guys who have the money to buy.
Yeah.
And they're starting to invest, and they're starting to invest heavy in that part of the market. So there is investors coming in, but it's money that will come in and go out again eventually as well. I agree with Doc to a point where the trickle down doesn't always work. It can work. It can work if it's how would you say, if it's taxed correctly and it's incentivized correctly. But you're right, it always trickles back up to the top. But if it trickles down and the right securities and the right systems were put in place for proper social security payments and taxation with regard to, and incentivizes for people to get proper salaries, because right now there is no incentive for people to get paid anymore, because for the employer it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense for them to employ outside. And if you even look at the brain drain, as I said before, the government is spending a fortune on educating people here in colleges and so on. And the first thing to do is to get on a plane and fly to a country where they believe they're going to be not just paid better, but appreciated more. They don't feel appreciated.
That's tragic.
So,
that's tragic.
It is, and it's a failure. That's where the failure is.
Yeah.
But the other people, the other, how to say, foreigners, if you like, that are still moving here, are moving here for all of the other reasons that Portugal has to offer. It's why we're here. It's because of the lifestyle. It's because of it's such a beautiful place, the climate and everything else, and the people and all that kind of stuff. It's just a shame that there's a part of it at the very top of it. And I suppose that's the only part for me that needs to get fixed. If they can fix that part, which is not an easy job, to be honest, it would be a sort of the perfect place, the utopia, if you like. But it's just, I think it's destroying itself from inside.
Interesting, and there's an irony as well, isn't there? The Portuguese people who brain drained, as it were, the professionals who went abroad and were better paid and looked after better, may have come back if the NHR continued, because it was also applicable to them, wasn't it? It was their opportunity to come back to Portugal.
It must have been away for 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, right. If they'd been working away out of the country for 5 years, they could come back on the NHR. So that bridge got burnt for them as well. So hopefully something will be done about that. It's always good for us to defer to Portuguese Antonio F, who often can give us a great perspective, a Portuguese perspective. He's saying this morning, when in power, parties don't like to fire corrupt, inept ministers because it shows the public there is corruption, or they can't choose the best people and are afraid of losing votes. What they can't see is that people prefer to see a government admit its mistakes and correct them. That government might win some votes that way, but they know the opposition will make a storm out of that. Yeah, that looks like a pretty good analysis. Thank you both for being here, you gentlemen, this morning. Great discussion. Sorry I didn't get to all the comments on the screen. Mrs. M has done a cheeky plug for her show that's coming up at 10, the Barefoot Broadcast, the Heart-Centered Revolution. That sounds like good fun, doesn't it? Cultivating wisdom and intelligence through the 6 heart virtues. You probably both want to wrap up before the dad jokes on your various political points of view. Go on, Doc.
Carl, I just want to be totally abuse your airtime and make a plug for Leona's skincare. She's going to be at Penella Market on the 9th of December. She's
I thought he was going to come out
that.
with some pithy political insight. And he's just a capitalist. He's just a capitalist marketing arm of his wife's business.
No. It's a small home-based business, which is it's very different.
Did you want to add a pithy political insight as well? Yeah, and all the best with that, Leona. Her products are brilliant, and they'll be at Penella Market. Go on, Andy. Last word.
Pithy political insight. I think when we get a major developer like Bobby calling for revolution, I think my point is well made.
Bobby?
Yeah, well, I don't know how it will work out for me, but I actually just think, from my point of view, that I think everyone knows what my point of view is in that I don't think anything's going to change. I don't think it, regardless who gets in, we're still going to have that same kind of stalemate to work with.
Yeah.
And we'll see. Let's see. I'm hopeful, but I'm not hopeful.
And the adjustment perhaps is the personal one, isn't it? Is to see that, you know, overall, in the end, this is still a great country to come to. Despite that, you know, the 80-20 rule, 20% of it is this political nonsense that you will face to some degree wherever you live in the world. And it's manageable just about here. And the other 80% of our lives is absolutely wonderful in this country. Wherever you find yourself on the political spectrum, you know, you're seeing two men here with very different ideas, but with big hearts and a lot of shared values, for sure. The Doc and Bobby here, different politically perhaps, but united and with me, you know, in the sense that we love this country despite that. And I think we're all in agreement, aren't we? It's unlikely to change. It'll be a lot of heat, not much light. It's going to be an interesting year for sure, with an election on March the 10th and the 50th celebrations of the Carnation Revolution. And maybe, just maybe, that revolution that both Andy and Bobby are looking for could occur at some point, with that ringing in the ears of history.